Here we go on jelly making. So the other day I had cooked the mulberries and then strained them, and I showed you how to do that. After that I got super busy, so I threw them in the fridge and just kept them in the fridge until I was ready, which happens to be today. So here is half of what I'd done the other day, and luckily that's enough to make one batch, and then the other I've got in here. So all I've done at this point is I added a little butter, just following the Sure-Gel recipe. I don't have any super secret recipe that I use. And then a little bit of butter. I did use store-bought butter because I happen to be out of our homemade butter at the time, or today. So I've got store-bought, and I'm just going to go ahead and follow the directions and bring that to a boil. In the meantime, I want to show you a couple things. First of all, this is an absolute must, if you ask me, in jelly making. It is a lid by Pampered Chef, and I'm not trying to promote them. I don't sell it or anything like that. But this thing is awesome. So as things start to boil, these little silicone things that look like a flower will just kind of jiggle up and release some of the steam. What happens is it keeps it from boiling over. Otherwise, you end up with things like this. And that's just a little bit of residue that's left on there, but I noticed it on the outside. So whoever washed that by hand didn't do a fabulous job. Luckily, the inside is cleaner. But anyway, this silicone lid will keep your jelly from boiling over. Now, I don't think that I would want to put it to the test and get this thing just, cranking just to see if it will boil over, because who wants to clean up burnt, cooked jelly off of your stovetop? That would be a mess. In this pan next to it, I'm trying to get a little leaf out of there. Tiny little one. There we go. My wonderful neighbors, Stan and Joanne. Stan went out and picked some choke cherries for me, and I did not realize it, but they have a ton of choke cherries. I'm so excited. You'll notice that the choke cherries themselves are not quite black. They got a definite red tinge to them, or hue to them, and then there's even a little bit of them that have not quite turned. Now this is important because those that have not quite turned yet, and those that are still red as opposed to the black, have a lot more pectin in them, meaning they will set up much better. So this pan here, I'm starting the process of making my juice just like I did the other day with the mulberries. I'm going to go ahead and turn this on and let them simmer, and then I'm just going to let them simmer / sit there for a couple hours. Now it's already 8 o'clock in the evening, so they'll probably sit overnight, just kind of steeping in that water, which, as you'll see, you can tell it's just enough to cover the berries. And I didn't use a great big saucepan. I just used my skillet, actually, because that'll be enough for this. And then I'm going to go ahead and drain them and strain them and hang them in the bag, just like I did with the mulberries when I did those. So as this starts to heat up, oh, you can see the steam coming out of there. Great, it's going to come to a boil in just a minute, and then I'll move on to the next step. But while I do, I'm going to find a lid for the choke cherry so that they can get started cooking too. As I'm waiting for this to come to a boil, I'm actually giving it a stir every once in a while. I don't want it to stick to the bottom. It really shouldn't. But I just want to make sure I don't have any scorching. It'll make cleanup a lot easier. And as you can see, I've got my directions right here with me. Even though I've made jellies and jams literally 100+ batches, I mean hundreds, a lot. But I still, every year when I start out, I always make sure I've got my directions here handy, just to make sure that I do it like it's supposed to be. I don't want to goof up. And this is my first batch of the year doing jelly. So I'm excited to be back at the canning. It's one of the things I just love. Gardening / canning is just a passion that I have. So as I wait for this to come to a boil, I'm going to put my lid back on, and we'll look here and see what it says. For the jelly, I believe I bring it to a boil, let it boil for a minute. Let's see. Bring mixture to a full rolling boil. If you don't know what a rolling boil is, that's a boil that doesn't stop rolling and boiling when you stir it. So that's a rolling boil. So we're going to do that, and as soon as that happens, we're going to go ahead and add our sugar in. When it comes to a boil again, after adding the sugar, we'll boil it for 1 minute. So at that point, our jelly will be ready to pour into our jars. So while we wait for that to happen, I'm going to grab my jars and make sure that they're heated and ready to go. You're getting a rare look at the laundry room. I'm not going to show you all of it because it's absolutely a mess. But this is my jar cupboard. And so, no, this is not all the jars I have. I have somewhere around 1,500 jars. But these jars in particular are the ones that we've used recently and have emptied. And so this cupboard is always full. I've grabbed jars out of here just a few minutes ago to make sure they were ready to go for the jelly. And then I thought, oh, I guess I'll go ahead and explain what I do to rotate those. So rather than running to the basement where I keep the rest of them, every time I want to can something, I am blessed to have plenty of cupboards. So this cupboard just stays stocked with a variety of jars, and they're the first ones I pull when I'm canning. I also, in this cupboard, have just been picking up some liquid pectin when I'm at the grocery store so that I have that on hand. And I find that it's a little bit spendy, so I kind of just grab one each time I'm at the store and think about it. That way it's not so expensive during jelly season when I have the extra expense of the sugar and that sort of thing too. So anyway, this is what I do and it works really well. In the laundry room also, I have 2 different spots where I hang my jar lids, or rings I should say. I just hang them on a string, as you can see. The first one I put on I tied, and then the rest of them I simply slipped over the yarn, and then I just have it hanging on a hook. Now I did originally have it hanging up here, and I had both of them up there. The problem that I have with that is that I can't reach it. So I moved it down where I can reach it. I'm just a little over 5 foot tall, and this works a lot better. So that's one way that I store my rings and keep them out of the way. This is our rolling boil, meaning it doesn't stop boiling just because I stir it. As you can see, it's instantly back to that rolling boil. So at this point, what I'm going to do is go ahead and add the sugar in. I'll stir it up really good and let it come back to that rolling boil. While I'm doing that, my oven is set for 225 degrees, and it's just about to reach that point. It's going to beep at me. All right, my sugar is incorporated. My oven is hot. And that tells me that the jars that I have put in there, that's just the oven, telling me it's ready, it's at its 225. The jars that I put in there are sterilizing, although I really just need them to be heated. They don't need to be sterilized. The Blue Book canning rules and suggestions that is put out, which is a great resource, as well as the Ball company. They don't require or expect you to boil your jars, lids, and rings like they did years ago. And the reason why is that the rubber on the back of the jar lids, right in here, is not made from the same substance that it used to be, and so it can't tolerate that boiling ahead of time like it used to. So now they just suggest that they're clean and ready to go. And now this one is not, because I've got my hands on it. It's not clean like it should be. So I'm not going to use that one, but I'm going to go ahead and let this mixture come up to a rolling boil again, and then it will be ready. It really doesn't take very long. So we're going to go ahead and do that, and I'll be back in a moment. Again, a stir every once in a while just to make sure that we don't have any scorching on the bottom. We shouldn't, but just in case, I give it a quick stir every once in a while. In the meantime, I'm filling my canner, my water bath canner, about a fourth of the way up. I'm going to go ahead and put it here on the burner next to the jelly and get it warming up, so it won't take quite so long to come up to temperature when I'm ready for it. As you can see, jelly making can be kind of messy. Here I've got my canner ready to go. It's got about a fourth of the way filled with water, and I've started to heat that up. The jars are going to be hot when I put them in. I won't let it come to a boil, but I will start heating it. Here I've got my first batch of jelly going. It's on the second portion of its cook, so it should be ready in just a minute. The next batch is waiting for me. There I've got some choke cherries that are ready to go in as well. All kinds of containers and measurements, measuring utensils, that sort of thing. It takes a lot. Over here, I actually have some bulk pectin that I had ordered, and I like that very much. I do follow the recipe that comes on the regular Sure-Gel that you get in the store, but I really like using the bulk pectin. I feel like it takes just a little bit more. I use a fourth of a cup, but it's so much cheaper. And then you can see we went to Pizza Hut today. The rest of the family's at a tractor pull, and so we made a quick stop at Pizza Hut today so we could spend some time together, quick eating, and then I didn't have to mess up the kitchen and spend time cooking. It's Sunday, so we kind of took the easy way out there. And anyway, as you can see, it takes takes some space, and yeah, there's a little bit of cleanup involved. Also, I've got you can see the kids were into some cookies from Aldi's yesterday. And then I've got some white vinegar here. There's a prime example of the boiling. So I'm going to go ahead and turn this down. But as you can see, it's not boiling over onto my stove, which is awesome. I don't mind throwing this in the dishwasher to clean it up, instead of having to scour and scour and scour the top of my glass top stove. And yes, I do can on the top of my glass top. Oh, see, I peeked and then it drizzled down there. Can you see that? I shouldn't have peeked at it. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move it off just a little bit because it's at that rolling boil point. I think I'm going to go ahead and turn it off. Well, not off. That would be wrong. I am going to put the timer on for 1 minute. That's what I'm going to do. Okay, so I'm going to let that keep boiling, which I can see that it is down in there. All right, we can pull that back over so it stays at that rolling boil. And then we have 49, 48, 47 seconds left to go on this, and then it will be ready to go and be jarred up. Inside my very dirty oven is a tray of jars. And so on this batch, I'm going to go ahead and do pints and half pints, and that's what I will put into my water bath canner. Now, what I was going to show you when I noticed that the jelly was starting to boil up is that with each canner full, I add just a few tablespoons of white vinegar. That keeps my jars from getting a white limey film on them. It doesn't hurt if that happens, but I just like the cleaner look. So that's where we're at. We're about to 1 minute or 1 second. Okay, so timer goes off, and I'm going to move my jelly off of the burner. I was using the tripod, but kind of all happened quickly. So I'm going to set the camera back on the tripod and show you how I fill the jars. We're ready to go ahead and start jarring our jelly. I'm really careful in pulling this off. because quite honestly, it's hot. There's plenty of steam in there. Now I've got a ladle, and I have these awesome mitts that my sister gave me. I'm kind of off to the side so that you'll be able to see what I'm doing. Anyway, they're hooked together, which is really awesome, and I like to use them for canning. So I'm just moving a couple of the jars over so I'll be able to fill them up for you. Now when I'm doing jelly, I don't necessarily use a ball jar, you know, a typical canning jar. You can see that my jars are nice and clean, but sometimes I'll use a jar that came from something else random. And once in a while there might be a little residue that I've not been able to get off. I just noticed on that one it's got a little bit of something from the dishwasher that is just lime. Our water tends to be a little bit limey, and so I have to kind of fight that. So let's see, I need my funnel. When I make jelly and jam, it feels like I need about 6 hands, but it always seems to work out. So at this point, remember, we've boiled the jelly on a rolling boil after adding that sugar for a full minute. Now I'm going to go ahead and put it in my jars, and I'm using a funnel. This is kind of multi-purpose funnel at our house. I've really been considering getting a stainless steel one. Whew, those are hot. Just because bacteria can get into plastic, and of course plastics break down as well. So it's on my Amazon wish list. We'll see. I'll probably get one of those soon. But anyway, in the meantime, I'm just obviously carefully ladling the jelly into the jars. You want to keep at least a 1/4 of an inch headway when you're making this. That means on these quarts or excuse me, not quarts, but on these pints and half pints, I'm going to only fill the jars up to that bottom lip there. And that'll give me plenty of air space between the jelly and the lid when we put it in the canner. And right here you can see the canner is starting to steam. So for right now I'm going to shut it off. It's plenty warm. I will turn it back on when I put the jars in. But it's ready to go. Okay, so I'm just being real careful not to overfill the jar. Like I said, they're pretty hot. I had them in the oven just so that everything stays as warm as possible. You want to keep things clean and hot. Even though my kitchen is pretty messy at the moment, I'm trying to be very careful about cleanliness. I want a little bit more here. Now the reason that I put butter in the juice when I was getting it ready is because by doing that, it helps keep the foam down when you're actually making the jelly. Otherwise, as it would do a rolling boil, it would get really foamy on you. And that foam obviously would have air in it. Air can house bacteria, and so it's just safer if you don't have all that foam. So what I'm going to do right now is just turn that just a bit so that you can see what I'm doing here. I've got my washed lids, and I'm trying not to touch them. So I'm going to grab a paper towel and my vinegar. So I just dabbed it on like this. And I'm just going to go around the edge of the rim. Before I put these jars in the oven to heat them up so they'd be nice and warm, I did check the rims of each one to make sure that there were no chips or anything like that on them. And as you can see, there's just a tiny bit of jelly that I did wipe off, and that's perfect. That's the reason that I do that. And I want to fold that over now for the next time and get some more vinegar. That way I don't have any sticky residue or anything like that, no oils for my fingers. on the rim because I want to keep it as pure as I can. Okay, so then what I'm doing is I have this, hold it up so you can see. It's a magnet, and this is pretty handy. My lids are all nice and clean here, and I just grab with a magnet, and then I can sit it right on top of the jar, and then add my ring. So without touching the rim of my jar or coming in contact with the underside of this lid, which would be in contact with my food, I am able to go ahead and put that ring on in as clean a manner as possible. So I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, and what we'll do is, as I finish them, what I normally would do would be I'm going to turn just a bit so you can see this. So I just will go ahead and put that in my canner. When I have the canner full, I'm going to want to make sure I've got a full inch of water on top of my jars. So it'll take me just a little bit to do that, and actually I'll need to go ahead and make another batch of jelly so that I have enough jars to fill my canner. I could go ahead and run the canner without having it full, but if I did that, I'd probably put some empty jars in there so that they don't rattle around. That seems to help that jar movement from happening, so I don't have broken jars. So that's what I'm going to go ahead and do. I'm going to finish filling the canner with my filled jars of jelly. I will make sure there's at least an inch of water over top of it, put the lid on, and bring it to a boil. All right, so the first batch of jelly is jarred, the lids are tight, and they are in the canner. I've got my second batch of jelly in the saucepan, and it's coming to its first rolling boil. A lot of times I will do 2 batches at once. Not in the same pan, however. I do them in 2 separate saucepans, or, you know, big saucepans like your stock pot kind of thing. Well, I don't know. I don't even know how many quarts this is. It's over a gallon. Probably holds 2 gallons maybe, so like an 8 quart, I would say. Anyway, that's kind of my standard for what I do jelly in. It is a big enough pot that when it starts to boil up, it doesn't boil over everything. And like I said, I normally will do 2 of them at once. However, today I wanted to be able to show you and talk to you about what I was doing as I was doing it. So I only did 1 so that I could keep focused on just one thing and the camera. So I'm just realizing I say the word "so" a lot. I will try not to do that. I am trying. That's so hard not to do. Okay, not saying that word. The jelly is cooking. It's coming to its first rolling boil, and the jars that I've already filled and tightened the lids on them, and they're in the canner, are just waiting for me in that hot water until I'm ready with the next batch. At that point, my canner is going to be pretty full, and I shouldn't need to put any just jars for spacing in there, but we'll see how it goes. So I did it again. While that's coming to its first rolling boil, I'm going to go ahead and unload the dishwasher. I'm going to refill it, wash up some things by hand, so that's out of the way. That's what we all do when we're cooking, right? Same thing with canning. I try and make use of my time. I'm going to throw a load of wash in, all that sort of thing, just like everybody else does. But I will want to keep an eye on that jelly to make sure that it doesn't scorch on the bottom or get really too much of a boil and come up over top out of that beautiful lid anyway. All right, I'll be back in a moment. All right, I'm cranking up the heat on the water bath canner at this point. Well, let me turn that so you're not right in the light. I've got just my last 2 little jars here that I'm going to go ahead and add, and sometimes I can use my hands as long as I protect myself from the jars. I tighten up the rings really tight when I put them into the canner, and then of course I use my jar lifter like this to put them in. And I have just enough room to do the 2 batches, plus the exciting part, this much extra, which I will let cool down, then I'll put it in the fridge, and that will be for breakfast. We will have the first batch of mulberry jelly of the season. We had, well, I guess I did a little bit of mulberry jelly last year, but not too much. We ran out right away. So this is going to be a welcome sight on some toast in the morning. The last thing that I'll do is go ahead and make sure that I add enough water over the top of the jars so that I have at least an inch of water on top of those before I start anything else, before I clean any further or whatever. You need that water pressure to help do its thing in the water bath canner. I noticed that as I was looking back over the video that I had already shot, I told you that you needed at least a 1/4 inch headway on the jar, and that I usually do right up here on this little lip right here. That's not a 1/4 of an inch. That's going to be about 3/4 of an inch, but when you read the directions, you'll find that doing different types of canning will require different headways. And I just always do right up to this lip right here. Then I have enough. You'll want to read the directions on that. That is just my personal preference. So I'm going to go ahead and finish filling just a little bit more water into my canner, get the lid on it, and let it get boiling. When it comes to a boil is when I'm going to go ahead and start my timer to finish out my jelly. The jelly is boiling now. Or not the jelly, but the water. That's definitely a rolling boil there. I'm going to set my timer for 5 minutes. With these small jars, that's all it takes, is 5 minutes at a rolling boil in my water bath canner. At that point, I will turn the burner off and let it cool down a little bit, probably about 10 minutes. Then I'll go ahead and pull the jars out with my jar lifter that I used earlier. I'll sit them on top of a towel, and then I'll take a second towel and cover the entire bunch of jars. Just like this, I would cover the whole thing with another towel. I'll show you that in a minute, and then it will sit overnight. The timer has gone off. I've moved the canner off of the heat, and they've been sitting here for probably about 10 minutes. At this point, I'm going to use my jar lifter to bring out the jars. I put them in a padded, like a towel. You might even hear some pings. There they go. I love that sound. Makes me smile every time. Now looking at the jars, I think I could have added a little more vinegar because I can see a little bit of lime residue on there. Like I said, our water can be a little bit limey here. It's not too bad, but I do notice it sometimes in the dishwasher, and then certainly when I'm canning. You want to make sure that you've got a space in between each jar. I hope that it's not too noisy. I've got the dishwasher running, cleaning up some of my mess. I poured myself a glass of iced tea. Let the dishwasher do its thing. Okay, so you can see that there's a little bit of light colored residue on the jars, and that's from the lime. So I'll wash those off when they're cooled. But what I'm going to do in the meantime is cover them with a towel so that the cool air doesn't hit them overnight while they sit. We have the air conditioning on, and so of course there's cool air that's circulating through the house. And what's recommended is that you cover them. So that's what we'll do, and then in the morning they'll be ready to go. I have no fear that they're going to gel correctly, because as you can see on the side of the jar, it's already starting to set up. That's going to be beautiful jelly. And as I said earlier, I'm going to let that cool down a little bit, and then I'm probably going to try it yet tonight. But it's going to be great in the morning for the rest of the family. Thanks for joining me as I made this mulberry jelly. We will be canning lots and lots of things as the summer goes on. The peas are ready to be picked tomorrow, so that will probably be the next project. And as you know, I've got choke cherry juice that I'm working on, so that will need to be jarred up as well. Remember to hit the like button, subscribe, and share with others that you think might be blessed by this video. I hope you had a great weekend, a great day, and I hope that you sleep well. I know that I will. It's about 9:45, and I feel like I accomplished a lot. The family's still at the tractor pull, so I'm going to drink the rest of my iced tea and put my feet up for a while. Good night.